People say when you work in the White House, people don't realize that probably 90+% of the people that work in the White House actually work in the Eisenhower Executive Office building next to the White House, because the West Wing is very, very small.
Yeah.
And so I was going to be one of the 40 or 50 people working in the West Wing
Right.
of the White House.
Yeah.
The only thing that separates my office from the Oval Office is the Roosevelt Room.
Right.
It's like I kind of have to take that opportunity.
You're going to go and just work on this campaign, not really knowing where it's going to go. So you go and work on this campaign. For how long did you work on the campaign?
It was a couple of months.
Okay.
I mean, it was really toward the end of the 2016 campaign, and really it was really more like I want to go have this experience that I probably never would again. And so we win or lose, whatever. I work out of Trump Tower and
absolutely.
see what happens. And really threw BJ off into the deep end because, like you said, he'd never run a company and never, he had really just got his feet under him at Yellowhammer running business development. And so, that was a tough time for Yellowhammer, but I think also kind of accelerated that learning curve where he had no choice but to do that. And God knew this whole time that I was going to end up leaving. And so he needed that to be able to come in and run Yellowhammer after I really left, after we won and got offered a job to work in the White House. It's kind of another one of those things where it's like, when else in life is that ever going to happen? How do you turn down an opportunity to work in the West Wing?
Right.
I mean, people say when you work in the White House, people don't realize that probably 90+% of the people that work in the White House actually work in the Eisenhower Executive Office building next to the White House, because the West Wing is very, very small. And so I was going to be one of the 40 or 50 people working in the West Wing of the White House. The only thing that separates my office from the Oval Office is the Roosevelt Room. It's like I kind of have to take that opportunity.
One of those things you have to take. So you're working on the campaign. You won the campaign. How did it transition? So you're just you're working for President Trump, but then did they come in and say, "Hey, do you want to be one of his staffer?" I mean, what was the process there? How'd that work?
So the president and I got to know each other during the campaign because in a communications role, one of the main things that I did was, everything's communications to him. He's always thinking communications, but one of the main ways that we got to know each other was recording videos for him. That any kind of video that the campaign was putting out, like I was in the room working with him to produce that video, and he's obsessive about it. What do the lights look like? What's the camera look like? What's the sound? What's how we set up the shot? Everything. And so we got to know each other through that. And so in the transition between winning and being in the White House, I actually came back to Alabama because I wasn't planning to go. I didn't know that we were going to. And I was going to come back and run Yellowhammer.
Fire BJ.
Yes, that's right. And a guy named Jason Miller, who was the communications director at the time, basically said, "We really want you to come." Awesome. And so I accepted. And so it's just wild. And so part of that is you have to divest yourself of a lot of your things you own when you go and work in the White House in that way.
That's right.
So I actually sold Yellowhammer.
So like being a
probably
senator,
pretty steep.
I didn't realize. Okay, so my buddy is in politics in Tennessee, and he says I think when you become a senator, you have to sell your company. Is it? What's the problem?
There are definitely different rules between executive branch, legislative branch, and state versus federal, and all these different things. But for us, it was. Anything that you own that could conceivably could be touched by your government job that you could influence. So for instance, Yellowhammer, if I've got all this inside information because I work in the White House, and I also own a news outlet
that's political,
and so I'm getting them special inside information, which drives more traffic to the website, which makes more money. So you could see where it would be a potential, conflict of interest.
So you had to sell Yellowhammer.
So I had to sell it, and it puts you in a tough spot because everybody knows when January 20th comes and the president gets sworn in, this has to be sold. You lose leverage when you're on a timeline like that, and so I probably sold it at a discount for what it would have been otherwise. But I did that feeling like that taking this opportunity was going to open up a whole another world of opportunities that wouldn't have existed otherwise.
So you are in the White House. Okay, so I'm not a political guy. I don't know a ton about politics, but here in the last probably 6 or 8 months, and you're going to laugh at this, my wife and I started watching Designated Survivor on Netflix and Madam Secretary.
Right.
I love it. Okay, it's one of those things and I'm not a TV watcher. So, how similar is the day-to-day and the thought process to what you see on TV as to what the real life is?
Well, so I had to caveat this by saying I only have experience in the Trump White House, and
Right.
it's a unique situation. It's not, normal in the
For sure.
strictest
Yeah.
sense. But I think that most, television accounts are idealized
Right.
versions of. There's some truth to it, but then there, it's drama. It's
For sure.
And so I think, for me, it was The West Wing. I don't know if you've ever watched The West Wing,
Okay.
but that was a TV show that I grew up watching and loving. And, it's kind of these, they're all, I'm a conservative politically. They were Democrats, they were left-leaning, but then you get to see behind the scenes, you're like, oh, these are good people trying to do good things, and
Right.
we just maybe disagree. And so I would say that the real-life version is a little bit more cynical
Right.
than the
Which seemed to
idealized
be.
West Wing version is. Designated Survivor, the whole premise of that show being that, when you go and do the State of the Union address, it's like everybody's in one room, so you got to hold one person back just in case something happens here.
Right.
That's true. That
Yeah.
does actually
Absolutely.
happen.
Yeah.
And a lot of the kind of cool national security behind the scenes things that kind of touches on
Yeah.
are some of the coolest aspects of the job. I
It
mean,
is.
like flying on Air Force One and
That's awesome.
things like that. So there are some similarities, and they've gotten to the point now where the Oval Office always looks close to the truth. I mean, you've seen a million pictures of it. What almost every show that I've seen gets wrong is what the actual West Wing looks like. The halls are very narrow. The offices are very small.
It's old.
It's old. Trump had remodeled some of it in there and to kind of update it, which happens once every 8 years.
For
So
sure.
if you think about the most highly trafficked workspace in the country, only gets renovated once every 8 years. Yeah. Imagine what it looked like when we walked in the door.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was, it's not great. So the TV shows get the way the West Wing looks totally wrong. And I would say the day-to-day workings of the West Wing, it just depends on what your job is. I mean, this is the tough thing to capture is there are some people, the vast majority of people that work in the White House, again, they're working at the building right across this little driveway called the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. They watch a lot of things play out on TV the same way that you do.
That's interesting.
Because they're not in there. Now, if you're in the little small group that's right around the Oval Office, your life is a lot different because you're like in the middle of that. And then there's even people that are in the West Wing that may be a step removed from that.
Right.
Their lives are a lot different from that. So it's really tough to kind of capture everyone's experience of what it's like in there because everybody's job is so dramatically different. And for me, the advantage I had was being a communications person, and Trump is always thinking communications. So you're in the middle of every single thing.
Yeah. Did you the hours? Let's talk about that. Was it crazy hours?
Oh yeah. I mean, you're in there in the 6 or at the latest 7 o'clock hour. You're out of there at the in the 8 o'clock hour at night. Probably like
All the time.
pretty much every day, and you never know when you're going to have to be. I mean, my family. The first time that my family came to D.C. while I was there. Actually, we were out. Went out to dinner with them, and I got a phone call, and I had to go back to the White House because we were getting ready to launch airstrikes in Syria.
Oh, wow.
And so I kind of had to say, "Hey guys, can't really talk about it, but you'll see it on the news in a little bit."
Yeah, I gotta go. Exactly. Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy your time there? Because you can sit there and you can go, man, the great experience was great. Did you enjoy it? From a day-to-day perspective, did you get up in the morning and have fun and look forward to going to work?
No, I really didn't.
Yeah.
And, that's not a function of the working in the White House, which is always going to be high stress. It's
For
not
sure.
that. If you'd asked me when I was in the White House, are you stressed? I would have said no. You get conditioned to,
Absolutely.
it becomes normal, even working in that environment. The thing that I did not enjoy was, and this is something I've tried to apply to my business now, is the workplace environment was not just high stress, it was toxic. And so there was a real lack of leadership at the staff level. I write a lot about in my book about my time working in the White House. John Kelly, who was the chief of staff at the time, he'd walk around telling people this is the worst blanking job he ever had.
Oh, wow.
And if that's the chief of staff is over here just talking about how much his life sucks, that sets a pretty negative
Toxic,
tone,
like you said.
very toxic. And then there was also in the communications space, there was, we brought together some people from various factions and tried to make a team out of it.
Yeah.
And, my book is called Team of Vipers.
Right.
And there's a reason why the book is called Team of Vipers.
Yeah.
And it's because there was a lot of, infighting and backstabbing. And, I'm not just going to point the finger at others. I write in my book, I became consumed by that myself.
Yeah.
Sean Spicer, who was the press secretary at the time, I helped orchestrate his departure. And then the day come where somebody orchestrated my departure from the way, so it's kind of live by the sword, die by the sword kind of thing. But yeah.
Was it a situation where you saw it was the truest example of everyone trying to step on everyone else to get to the next level?
No question, no doubt. But even deeper than that, it's what power and the proximity to power does to your moral compass, and everyone trying to maintain that access to power. I mean, I orchestrated my day around, I want to make sure that I'm the one in the room with the president. I'm going to make sure I'm the one that's talking to him about this, and not, if that means I got to block somebody else or undermine somebody else or stab somebody else, I'll do what I'll have to do it. And Nick Saban came to the White House while I was there because Alabama won the national championship, and so we were waiting to go and talk to the president with him, and the deputy national security advisor happens to walk by the Roosevelt room and see us in there, and he actually pops his head in and he said, "Hey, while I've got you," he said, there are college football coaches that have some success here and there, and maybe they even win a national championship,
right,
but then they fall off, and
for sure,
whatever. What is it that you do that has allowed you to have this sustained success year after year after year after year after year? And Saban, who's a very soft-spoken guy, which may surprise you if you meet him one-on-one. He's not gregarious.
Yeah.
He's very kind of reserved. And he said, well, first of all, I don't really know what other people do, so I can't, I don't know how to compare it to what other college coaches are doing. But I will say, when I worked under Bill Belichick in the NFL, Bill Belichick, in his organization, every single person had a clearly defined role, clearly defined responsibilities, and clearly defined goals. And every single person from the water boy to the quarterback were held accountable for those things every single day. And he said, I spend every waking hour at Alabama holding everyone accountable to those clearly defined roles, responsibilities, and goals. And we kind of laughed because it was the exact opposite of what it was like in the White House, where, we didn't have clearly defined roles. It was all kind of, what can you get yourself in the middle of? There weren't clearly defined goals. There weren't clearly defined responsibilities. And there was no one really holding people accountable to those things, so they didn't exist. And so it created this chaotic working environment that was really, it became toxic. And so as now I think about at Telegraph Creative, where I'm at now, that's really something that we're working through as we grow, is making sure that everybody has those clearly defined roles, responsibilities, and goals, and that there is somebody there who's holding them accountable to those things, and we hold me accountable too. We're going to hold each other accountable and create a really positive place where we can do great work and be fulfilled in what we're doing.
Do you think that conversation that the guy poked his head in and asked Coach Saban, do you think that was a moment where you went, man, this is powerful? Do you think,
no.
I didn't even know that happened, and you're talking about that. Here it is, however many years later.
Sure.
I mean, again, don't want to get too Sunday school on anybody, but man, I just think that God puts us in places at certain times to learn certain things, and who knows? Because I got no doubt that in the next 15 to 50 years that you're going to do amazing things no matter what you're doing. So I mean, you went from political engine to working in the White House to now at Telegraph, which is an amazing a marketing agency here in Birmingham. But man, that instance right there sounds like it was just a landmark